Years since the Truth and Reconciliation final report was handed to former President Nelson Mandela in 1998. The report recommended, amongst other things, a list of over 300 apartheid perpetrators should be prosecuted and financial compensation for some of the victims. This all in an effort to give closure to the victims of apartheid-era crimes. However, the family of Moss Morudu, a then 22-year-old anti-apartheid activist who had disappeared in 1987 and was subsequently killed by the apartheid police, has described the TRC as a failed project. The Morudu family spoke to our SABC news reporter Sipho Stuurman in Mamelodi in Pretoria.
Today, the 29th of October, marks 20 years since the release of the final Truth and Reconciliation report to former President Nelson Mandela. Now, the TRC process was supposed to bring a sense of peace and sort of ease the pain of the apartheid crimes to a lot of families that lost their loved ones. And we are coming now from Mamelodi in Pretoria East, where one family, the Morudu family, lost their loved one, and it was a 22-year-old, that is Moss Morudu, who disappeared in 1987 and has never been found since then. We understand, of course, through the TRC process that he was captured and he was killed by apartheid officials. And the family says, despite the process, they haven't found healing. And I'm now joined by Moss's brother, that is David Morudu. Thank you very much for joining us. 20 years since the final report. You've lost your younger brother. The remains were not found. Just talk to us about how you're feeling.
The family is not found closer because people who captured Moss and eventually who killed Moss are still alive today, and they were never summoned before the law. So based on that, it is practically impossible for the family to find complete closure.
And I understand the family testified at the TRC. Just talk to us. Who was there representing the family, and how was that experience?
The family did present at the TRC. My mother was the key person, and my sister were the other person who gave evidence on behalf of Moss.
All right, and just talk to us about what do you now know about Moss Morudu, the 22-year-old who was an anti-apartheid activist, how it disappeared, and what you've eventually learned.
What actually happened, Moss was in hiding somewhere in Pretoria. He was supposed to be part of the Delmas trial, which Tintin and Neo, both late, were part of the Delmas trial. So Moss was in hiding. Apparently, it was suspected that he's the one who had weapons in hiding. So he was hiding in Pretoria until he got a message that he's needed, he should go to exile. Based on that, he believed that whoever was coming to pick him up was actually going to take him across the boundaries, the borders, into exile, so that he can join the likes of the MK and the ANC. Unfortunately, the people who came to pick up Moss were private police or security police, and that is how Moss was captured.
All right.
Moss believed in them, and they only to find that he was handed over to the white police.
And now we understand, of course, that his remains have not been found, because we understand that he met a very brutal death at the hands of the police. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. According to the TRC, Moss met a very brutal police. His body was wrapped with explosives.
Was blown up with explosives.
Yeah, was blown up with explosives, and then it was blown up with explosives, so that at the end of the day, the body didn't exist at the end of the day. It was blown up several times.
Does that make it difficult to think of what your brother went through?
Yeah, it makes it very difficult. It makes it very, very difficult. Just if you can think about it, if you can imagine, and you can think how Moss, what a great person, what a humble person was, only to meet his death in such a cruel manner. That makes us even more uncomfortable.
And then now, looking back at 20 years of the TRC final report, do you believe in that process?
No, I think it was not. It was no justice was done to that. As I said earlier, that the perpetrators managed not to. Some of them never came before the TRC. Like in case of Moss, for instance, those who captured him, those who handed him over to the police, and those who actually did the actual killing, they're still alive today, living as if nothing of such did happen. And that traumatized the family on top of that.
And today we live in a democratic country, you know. So just your take on that. I mean, this was something that your brother was fighting for, yourselves as well. What do you think of South Africa today? Was it well worth the struggle, the sacrifice that your family has endured?
It's hard to say anything positively based on what is currently taking place in the country, especially the issue of corruption. That is distorting the whole concept of democracy at the end of the day. So personally, I'm not happy in terms of what is happening. I'm just happy that at least today we can express ourselves. You know, there's freedom of speech, there's freedom of movement. But the major thing in terms of there are no jobs to start with. The crime is very high. You know, quality of education is also compromised. You know, there was part of it corruption, which we read about it on day-to-day basis. That distort the whole thing of democracy.
Well, there is a saying that freedom was never free, and the Morudu family can certainly testify to that. They lost their loved one, and they never even got the remains or a chance to say goodbye or bury him. And for this family, there is no healing 20 years after the TRC final report was released.
Nurses have